Vikings land, and that would be with Kyler Murray, J.J. McCarthy, and how these guys have looked and how it's looked to follow it from a reporting standpoint. Garrett, that's where we will begin. I am just curious where your emotions are at, Garrett, 7 practices in, with what you've read, what you've seen, what you've heard. Take it from there. Let me have it. I want to hear it all.
Yeah, so I entered the training camp, or entered August, hoping that it would be much more close. But right now, from everything I've read, from the clips I've seen, it very much appears Kyler Murray is way out in front of JJ in terms of the start, the winning the quarterback job. And that was the point that that I kind of made last week, where if Kyler Murray is this good of a player, it's not going to be that much of a competition for everybody that was so gung-ho on Kyler is levels and tiers above JJ. And credit to the people that have been on the Kyler Murray train from the start. I am a little frustrated with what I've seen, what I've read from JJ so far throughout camp. The anticipatory throwing is one part that, quite frankly, entering year 3, I'm disappointed with JJ, and considering we drafted him with the 10th overall pick, no excuses. He has to be better in that regard, and unfortunately has been so far. So credit to everybody that was on the Kyler Murray train entering August, and that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I want to, Collar, stick with J.J. McCarthy. I mean, we'll talk about Kyler Murray and just, how it's looked, how we think it'll progress. But I'll just, get your thoughts, Collar, to what my opinion has been. It's like, I just don't know with J.J. McCarthy if I've seen much, if any, real transformation in what I've seen on the practice fields. Like, there's no question, in my opinion, Collar, watching every throw thus far, that when it is an open look and there needs to be a high velocity throw in the red zone on the body, like, he can make that happen. But it feels like every time, or most instances, where he has to apply touch on the football to get the ball up and down the field, or whether he has to, as Garrett just mentioned, anticipate windows or receivers out of breaks, it's just felt like a tick slow. As he's going through progressions, it's just hitch, hitch, hitch. And it feels like there's got to be a decisive decision. Now, I've tried to give grace in the sense that when he is working with the backups and the number 2s, how much are these receivers open against Brian Flores' defense, which has looked good. But in the end, I think unless the ball is just uncorked at some point, and until this doesn't maintain and continue to be a theme, it's just been on my mind. How do you feel about that, Collar?
Well, you didn't ask me about my emotions. I think I'm looking at Garrett thinking that his ice cream cone just fell on the ground with the disappointment from having J.J. McCarthy struggle so far. I think at this moment, I would probably say I'm sort of resigned to the fact of where things are, that if through 7 practices we don't see anything that would indicate that this quarterback has taken a step forward. And we've had some very high intensity practices at this point, 2 of them with pads. And I would also say that last Saturday was a very intense and long practice. And when you're just not seeing consistency of accuracy, even when we're watching one-on-one drills or red zone drills or warm-ups, the accuracy is just still struggling to be on point consistently. And I know our buddy Kevin Seifert's tweet blew up about, 3 straight, I think it was on air, and 3 straight balls just went flying into the fescue that's behind the goal line. And, it just has made me think a lot about whether accuracy is something that can be fixed. I think it can definitely be improved, but can it actually be greatly improved to the point where J.J. McCarthy can be a starting quarterback in the league? And when we look through history, there are a lot of first-round quarterbacks who have all the tools, and I think that McCarthy does. I think that when I read in The Athletic and the quarterback tiers that he's not a big guy, I'm like, you haven't stood next to him. I think he's a pretty big guy, and he's definitely got a big arm, and he's definitely got great athleticism. And I think that when he's confident, you can see him playing that way. And we've seen that in spurts throughout different training camps, 2024, the end of 2025. But I haven't seen much of the confidence there from him. And I wonder about how much plays into it the fact that the reps have leaned pretty strongly toward Kyler Murray, the totality of them. Murray starting to run away with those first team reps, and you can sort of start to feel it slipping through your fingers. And there have been times where I've seen receivers down the field. I mean, we've seen enough of these Kevin O'Connell practices. We know where the ball is supposed to go, and you're going, okay, and now you throw, okay, and now you checked it down to Josh Oliver for 3 yards. There's been a lot of that, and I've been counting up like downfield throws and underneath throws. And in yesterday's practice, I think I had like 17 underneath throws or something from JJ McCarthy. So I feel like it's one of those things where it's a lot of stuff that's weighing on him and coming together that is making this pretty difficult. And I think that it is one of those, you're going to kind of prove whether you're going to go one way or the other from this. Like, this is a really tough spot. This is a lot of adversity to be in. So the rest of camp will maybe tell us a lot about whether JJ pulls himself out of this or whether this is kind of who he is right now.
I think the point you made about the underneath throws, like in Wednesday's practice, it felt like most of JJ's reps were just training screen passes. I mean, there were at least 4 tight end screens that he was required to throw, and then there were a ton of runs with his reps. And so I'm glad you talked about like the talent and the size, because when you do stand next to him, like from an athlete perspective, from an explosiveness perspective, you're not missing much. And then from a sheer arm strength, like I joked, Coller, on the perch where we watched practice the other day, there was a red zone throw to Jawan Jennings that felt like it might have taken Jawan's fingers off because it was thrown with such velocity and into a tight window. It's just every time that, you know, I think arm talent is such a fascinating discussion. And it's like, can you throttle the ball at certain trajectories and speeds when you absolutely have to do it? And when JJ is required to do that stuff, it feels like he's thinking about doing it as opposed to just naturally feeling it. And so Garret, I mean, I know you watch so much tape, and I know you watch so much JJ tape. And so I would wonder, like, does this stuff surprise you, or if you think about watching the Michigan tape, like, is some of it like I can understand what we're seeing now?
So I think it's a combination of, you know, everything wrapped in one, because there were times even last year on tape, I think of the one big throw that he had to Jordan Addison in the Dallas game where it was a 50-plus yard throw. It was right in his arms. And then there was a throw earlier in the year that he missed. It was all over Vikings Twitter about, you know, we have this first-round quarterback. How could he miss this? But whenever you think of, I go back to the point that Coller made of guys that have all the physical tools, and I'm really glad the point that was brought up of JJ, you know, not being a small guy. I mean, he's 6'2", 6'3", 220 pounds. He's roughly the same size and weight as Adrian Peterson. I don't think there were ever concerns about Adrian Peterson's height, weight when he was in the NFL. I mean, last I checked, I didn't think there was. But with JJ, what really frustrates me now as we enter year 3 is, you know, everything is in there. You know, all of the tools are there, but we never consistently see it. And it gets to a point where I know he's only 23 years old. I know he's only started 10 games, but buddy, we're in year 3. I mean, we brought in Kyler Murray for a reason. Your job is, I mean, everybody in the world knows it's on the line. There's also a very real scenario where that JJ could be QB3, so that there's not even a point of discussion in the season opener against Green Bay. So all of this is to say that I do worry about, you know, everything, just because we haven't seen it on a consistent level. And rather than, you know, kind of like the Anthony Richard discussion, rather than seeing one splash play, the Anthony Richardson play against the Texans in the opener a couple of years ago where he threw it 70 yards, instead of that play, we need to see, you know, 7 or 8 good plays in a row. And we haven't seen that.
Yeah, and I mean, look, this is probably on the Vikings Collective. We're going to try to be as positive as possible. So I feel like we're going through it here.